Iron Man's armors have dazzled popular culture for decades. But then a harder question surfaces. What truly happens when engineering ambition pushes past every cinematic limit? The answer begins in a dusty cavern with a suit that never appears grand on screen, yet anchors all that follows. The original Mark I, hammered together under duress, looks primitive beside later marvels, yet it establishes the indispensable technological pillars that will let Tony Stark one day flirt with godhood. Every servo, reactor coil, and telemetry loop now common to Stark technology finds its root here, in machinery cobbled from shrapnel-littered workshop scrap. From a clinical standpoint, the Mark I represents a high-risk, low-resource exoskeletal proof of concept. Its external plating is cold-rolled iron hand-riveted over a lattice of steel ribs. Each rib houses small, brushed DC electric motors scavenged from surface-to-air missile parts. The combined output of those pedestrian motors barely reaches double-digit horsepower, yet Stark's improvised torque multiplication gears deliver sufficient mechanical advantage to lift a human body plus 200 kilograms of armor into stumbling bipedal motion. A vest-mounted battery array feeds the motors in short bursts, and integrated carbon oxide filters protect the operator from smoke generated by its crude flamethrower. The suit's life support subroutine improvised from medical defibrillator logic monitors Stark's erratic heart rhythm through copper leads threaded into his undershirt. If the rate drops below 40 beats, the pacemaker fires a pulse measured in milliseconds but decisive in magnitude, rescuing him from a rhythmic arrest. Offensively, the Mark I carries a tri-nozzle petroleum flamethrower mounted over the right bracer, a pneumatic spike driver welded under the left forearm, and a defensive smoke emitter that doubles as a fire suppression agent. Thermographic analysis suggests flame cone temperatures exceed 200 degrees Celsius, enough to compromise lower-grade ballistics, but insufficient against advanced alloy plating. Despite that limitation, the Mark I proves a strategic disruptor. The moment it belches a column of fire, enemy formations recoil, buying the pilot seconds to reposition. Aerodynamically, it is a nightmarian, ungainly iron brick with a blunt frontal cross-section. Yet, its boot thrusters propel it at 50 meters per second for short directional hops. That mobility, combined with its psychological shock value, allows Stark to breach a cave wall and begin the long march towards safety. Nothing about the Mark I belongs on a strongest suits list if raw power alone were the metric. However, its deeper value is evolutionary. It prototypes chest-mounted power, self-contained breathing loops, embodied armor control circuits, and the earliest iteration of repulsor theory, embryonic, but present in the magnetic steering coils used to aim the flamethrower. Without the Mark I, no later armor could exist. Every technological leap that follows miniaturized arc reactors, nano-constructed plating, even cosmic-scale mechs, derives directly from these first stumbling steps. For that reason, the Mark I earns its place. It is the technological mitochondrial Eve from which every other Stark invention descends. And as crude as its actuators and batteries are, they foreshadow a decisive truth. With enough iterative cycles, prototypes become legends. Those cycles accelerate rapidly once Stark reaches civilization, and the next breakthroughs leaker, faster, ruthlessly optimized will redefine what an exoskeleton can accomplish. The evolutionary leap is called Silver Centurion, and it transforms improvised survival gear into a true weapons platform. 2. Silver Centurion, the 80s hyper leap. When the industrial world next witnesses Stark's armor, it does not resemble a bolted-together escape pod. It gleams in anodized silver and crimson, an embodiment of Reagan-era futurism nicknamed the Silver Centurion. This Model 8 platform represents Stark's first systemic engineering reevaluation. Rather than layering improvements over earlier shells, he abandons legacy hardware and rewrites every subsystem. Material science now dominates his approach. The outer plates shift from ordinary steel to a titanium-vanadium alloy with a ceramic matrix microlayer added by ion sputtering. That sandwich structure yields superior tensile strength while dropping mass by nearly 30% compared to the previous mainline Mark VI. Internally, the Centurion debuts the dual-source propulsion system. Instead of relying solely on repulsor jets, Stark pairs a compact trans-arc thruster with conventional vectored jet nozzles. The arc core provides raw electromagnetic thrust, while the jet vanes supply fine-tuned maneuvering and redundancy for atmospheric flight. Flight telemetry from early test runs demonstrates the suit crossing continental distances in minutes rather than hours, a feat unthinkable for predecessor armor. Stark's telemetry overlay records acceleration peaks above 9 times Earth gravity, buffered by micro-gimbal seat suspension that maintains spinal alignment and prevents pilot blackout. Such inertial dampening is the first instance of Stark applying biomechanical ergonomics, a field he will later expand when integrating armor directly with his own nervous system. Weapon systems also step into a new era. The Centurion's gauntlets house updated repulsor emitters using prismatic graphite gold lenses that concentrate particle output by a factor of 12 relative to older units. Data logs show these repulsors vaporizing 30mm depleted uranium slugs mid-flight before they reach the suit's impact threshold. On the chest, the uni-beam projector is rebuilt around a variable aperture crystal, enabling both wide-angle concussive blasts and narrow, high-intensity lances. Stark's support, AI. Then an early iteration of what would evolve into Friday calculates optimal beam shape in real time based on sensor input, marking Stark's first adaptive munitions platform. Defensive innovations prove equally significant. The Silver Centurion stitches an anti-repulsor field through its plating. Stark integrates counter-magnetic coils beneath each armor segment, forming a circumferential Faraday cage that disrupts incoming energy weapons calibrated to match his own earlier repulsors. In battle against Obadiah Stane's Ironmonger, the field arrests a direct blast and reroutes the energy through the suit's dissipative grid, allowing Stark to return fire with a redirection cannon located on the left pauldron. This makes the Centurion one of the earliest practical demonstrations of energy redirection technology in human-scale armor. Yet the Centurion is more than a sum of specs. It marks a philosophical pivot from survival engineering to deliberate dominance. Stark is no longer content merely to escape danger. He intends to police it proactively. To enable covert insertion, the suit incorporates a radar-subverting index-matching polymer that cloaks its electromagnetic signature. Stark's infiltration of data vaults during the Armor Wars reveals that the Centurion can hover 20 meters above radar arrays without detection. This stealth capacity, combined with supersonic sprint ability, turns Iron Man into a rapid response force independent of global airspace constraints. The weaknesses of the Silver Centurion stem from power density and heat management. The dual propulsion cycle draws more arc energy than earlier cores can sustain indefinitely. Field logs describe thermal spikes breaching safe margins, forcing Stark to vent superheated air through dorsal exhaust arrays. Such venting produces observable plumes that compromise stealth and limit extended dogfighting at full thrust. Nevertheless, the Centurion's strategic edge is undeniable. It is the first armor to balance speed, firepower, stealth, and defensive cycling in a single cohesive chassis. Importantly, its step-change performance convinces Stark that further gains require not just better alloys, but biological integration. That conviction ushers in a radical new frontier, merging flesh with machine, culminating in an internally stored, self-assembling suit known to engineers as Extremis. 3. Extremis. Armor. Bio. Digital convergence. Clinical observers categorize Extremis not merely as an upgrade but as a biomedical revolution. After years optimizing external machinery, Stark directs innovation inward, rewriting his own physiology via synthetic nanomorphic retrovirus. This engineered viral vector repurposes the body's histone acetylation mechanisms to insert iron silicate micro-reservoirs along bone marrow and neural bundles. In lay terms, Stark rigs himself as a living factory, able to secrete programmable nano-constructs on demand. Extremis is therefore a dual entity, part biological upgrade, part exoskeletal deployment system. When deployment protocols activate, cloudlets of liquid ferrous carbon nanoparticles extrude through Stark's dermal pores. Electrostatic self-assembly algorithms choreograph these particles into contiguous armored segments, locking molecule by molecule in less than 15 seconds. Each segment carries integrated micro-thrusters, micro-repulsor apertures, and distributed sensor nodes. The process resembles accelerated osteogenesis, bone forming outside the body under algorithmic governance. Vital signs captured during first activation record minimal adrenal response, confirming that the new neuromotor pathways created by Extremis allow Stark to treat armor formation as an unconscious reflex akin to blinking. In operation, the suit achieves reaction times measured in microseconds because command latency, limited by glove sensors and voice recognition, now runs on direct cortical impulses. Stark's parietal lobe cues flight vector changes, weapon discharge, and system diagnostics without any mechanical intermediation. This instantaneous loop translates to extraordinary agility. Flight path telemetry, plotted in three-dimensional vector space, demonstrates Extremis executing 90-degree turns at hypersonic speed while maintaining pilot comfort within acceptable G-force envelopes. Weapon arrays evolve concurrently. Extremis-driven repulsors derive power from an arc reactor now miniaturized to roughly the diameter of a silver dollar, yet capable of megawatt output. Stark's design leverages high-temperature superconducting windings made from yttrium, barium, copper oxide, permitting coil densities previously impossible without cryogenic support. The result is repulsor bursts that can shear tank armor in a single pulse. Simultaneously, programmable matter at the forearms enables improvised blades, crushing mauls, or lattice-structured shields within seconds, all sculpted algorithmically for mission-specific geometries. Defensively, Extremis implements dynamic phase-shift armor. Each nanoscopic plate can pivot 45 degrees along two axes, allowing the overall shell to redistribute impact forces like a living shock absorber. Stress-strain charts reveal that a kinetic strike dissipates through the lattice in helix patterns, reducing peak localized pressure by over 90%. Moreover, if a segment fractures, viral nanites trigger rapid repolymerization, sealing microcracks in real time. That regenerative capability keeps system integrity near 100% across engagements that would have shredded older suits. The synergy between biology and technology extends to sensory perception. Extremis hijacks the occipital and temporal lobes, granting Stark multispectral vision, radio frequency scanning, and sub-audible vibration mapping. The boundaries between human sense and machine sensor blur completely. The pilot embodies an augmented ecosystem that no external display could replicate. Strategic value skyrockets. Stark can detect electromagnetic anomalies inside a building 3 blocks away or track biochemical signatures floating on a wisp of wind. Yet the Extremis paradigm is not risk-free. Cellular overexpression threatens hypermetabolic collapse if the viral load becomes unstable. Stark mitigates this by embedding kill-switch code sequences keyed to his unique protein markers, preventing unauthorized replication. Nevertheless, the episode reveals a broader engineering principle. Maximal combat efficiency emerges when armor and operator converge into a single adaptive organism. Despite that breakthrough, Stark perceives limitations in Extremis' single-purpose bioreservoirs. The technology cannot easily support large-scale structural reconfiguration without straining internal physiology. To solve that constraint, he externalizes the nanotech into independent modular units housed beneath his skin. The project evolves into the Bleeding Edge suit. 4. Bleeding Edge Armor. Nanoscopic Dominion. Bleeding Edge constitutes the logical outgrowth of Extremis, but with a paradigm shift. The armor's nanites no longer depend exclusively on Stark's metabolic systems for assembly energy. Instead, they reside in dedicated bone marrow reservoirs and draw power directly from a next-generation arc reactor implanted within the sternum. Each nanite is a fully autonomous machine capable of morphing between structural support, energy conduit, or sensory nodiette. Collectively, they form a coherent macro device commanded through Stark's augmented neural network. At rest, the nanites exist as a colloidal suspension lining skeletal interstices. Upon activation, electromagnetic pulses prime each nano-unit, coaxing it toward the skin surface along pre-mapped dermal channels. The migration lasts less than 2 seconds, fast enough that high-speed videography captures only a silver flash before solid armor locks into place. Spectrographic composition shows a titanium-boron-graphene composite at 80% density of solid titanium, but triple its tensile strength. Coupled with dynamic nanite rearrangement, the suit can switch from flexible chainmail mode to rigid ballistic plate mode mid-impact, essentially rendering conventional munitions obsolete. The versatility of bleeding-edge weaponry eclipses even Extremis capabilities. Because every nanite holds programming subroutines for multiple weapon configurations, Stark can conjure electromagnetic blade edges, focused sonic emitters, or resonance-tuned mesh nets, capable of harmonizing with enemy armor frequencies to induce catastrophic failure. Offensive simulations demonstrate scenario-specific adaptability. In underwater combat, the nanites elongate into hydrodynamic fins, while repurpose repulsors to operate as magneto-hydrodynamic pumps, delivering fluid acceleration without gaseous exhaust. Conversely, in vacuum they form micro-thruster clusters across the suit surface, granting 6-axis maneuvering suitable for orbital dogfights. The Bleeding Edge sensor suite leverages distributed networking. Instead of relying on a helmet for primary perception, every nanite possesses micro-lensed photodiodes and capacitive antennae. The resulting real-time data mesh feeds into Stark's cerebral cortex, constructing a 360-degree situational awareness bubble with millimeter resolution. Environmental mapping updates hundreds of times per second, enabling predictive trajectory analytics that preempt incoming threats before they cross lethal distance thresholds. Power management escalates dramatically. The sternum-mounted reactor employs palladium-iridium fuel rings anchored inside a double-walled trinium core. Thermal absorption materials draw waste heat into phase-change reservoirs that both dissipate energy and supply sudden bursts when the suit performs high-drain maneuvers, such as firing gigajoule unibeam strikes. Field tests indicate the armor can sustain continuous gigawatt discharge for 45 seconds before reaching thermal criticality orders of magnitude longer than any predecessor. This adaptive utopia holds one Achilles heel: central processing dependency. The complexity of coordinating billions of nanites requires a robust fail-safe hierarchy. Should the central logic grid suffer electromagnetic interference beyond spec, nanite cohesion collapses. Stark counters by hardening the neural link with multi-layer quantum encryption and shielding beneath Faraday channels, but in high-intensity combat against exotic foes, the possibility of forced desynchronization remains. Recognizing that vulnerability, he develops specialized megasuits for singular existential threats. the first of which addresses a cosmic entity of rebirth and annihilation, the Phoenix. 5. Phoenix Buster Armor. Crescent against cosmic flame. When astrophysical telemetry flags the inexorable approach of the Phoenix Force, Stark realizes conventional nano-armor cannot guarantee planetary survival. He initiates Project Crescent, constructing a colossal mechanized chassis Phoenix Buster engineered around focused energy dispersion cannons. This armor dwarfs conventional mechs, standing hundreds of meters tall, built from layered osmium carbon fiber lattices fused with vibranium-laced joints to manage gravitational stress loads. The central cannon occupies the torso cavity, its circumference nearly as wide as suburban streets. Inside, concentric rings of muon-catalyzed fusion injectors accumulate deuterium plasma into a rotating confinement field. At firing peak, magnetic lenses collapse, driving the plasma into a singularity-like filament that targets the Phoenix's molecular pattern. The discharge does not rely on brute heat, but on quantum decoherence. The beam destabilizes the Phoenix's field of coherent psionic energy, forcing fragmentation. Navigational thrusters lining the armor's shoulders and calves operate on high-thrust fusion torches, each producing exhaust velocities surpassing orbital escape speed. Maneuvering such mass in space demands micronewton precision. Stark solves this by embedding inertial compensators similar to those found in SHIELD, space-capable craft, but upscaled 50-fold. The cockpit is a gyroscopic cradle suspended within a liquid inertial buffer, protecting the pilot from motion sickness and lethal inertial spikes. Auxiliary weaponry includes dorsal rail cannons launching smart slugs forged from neutronium alloy Kurisich slug encased in micro-reactors that detonate on impact, releasing gravitational shockwaves. Meanwhile, forearm repulsor arrays expand to dish-shaped emitters generating broad-spectrum counterfields that can deflect interstellar debris or redirect the Phoenix's flame wings during approach. Integrated shield grids derive from modified Wakandan hardlight tech obtained with royal permission. They wrap the armor in hexagonal photonic segments strong enough to withstand solar flares. Once operational, the Phoenix Buster stands on the lunar surface, bracing planetary stabilizers buried 15 meters beneath regolith. When the cosmic entity descends, Stark aligns the dispersal cannon and ignites the fusion sequence. The resulting beam fractures the Phoenix Force into several energy shards, rerouting each into containment fields pre-positioned by Earth's best telepaths and cosmic specialists. The armor's primary objective thus succeeds: disassembly, not annihilation. Nevertheless, the power surge sears core reactors past safe flammability margins, rendering Phoenix Buster a one-shot instrument. Massive structural microfractures propagate through its vibranium joints, and protocol dictates self-decommission. Stark jettisons the central core, allowing lunar gravity to scatter harmless debris. The mission proves Stark can scale his ingenuity beyond planetary contexts, yet highlights that specialized megasuits cannot persist as everyday defense. Returning to Earth, he shifts his focus from singularity weapons back to wearable platforms, this time fusing alien biology with on-demand metal. The innovation yields a living exoskeleton known as Endo-Sym. 6. Endo-Sym Armor. Symbiotic synthesis. The Endo-Sym suit arises from an unlikely marriage of Clintar symbiote biochemistry and Stark's bleeding-edge nanosystems. After isolating non-sentient symbiote tissue, Stark bioprints an inorganic mimic tuned to his neural frequency. The synthetic organism envelops him as a silver fluid, forming a seamless armor that responds to thought at the speed of synaptic potentials, but also possesses self-preservation instincts rare in inorganic matter. Materially, Endo-Sym is composed of liquid metallic molecules connected by adjustable covalent bonding. These bonds allow macro-scale reshaping without compromising micro-scale resilience. The suit's mass distribution can shift in an eye blink its density, focusing into fists for augmented punches or spreading into whiplash tendrils for grappling. Its offense includes morphing blades sharper than monomolecular scalpels, directed energy spiders that climb enemy armor and detach micro-explosives, and gland-produced acid jets tuned to dissolve composite ceramics. Biomechanically, Endo-Sym taps into the symbiote's latent energy storage. Unlike bleeding-edge nanites, which rely heavily on the central arc reactor, Endo-Sym converts ambient kinetic and thermal inputs into biochemical recharge. This feature grants quasi-perpetual endurance under combat conditions where environmental heat abounds. Telemetry logs note that during urban conflicts, the suit's charge state remains above 90% even without arc reactor contribution. Defensively, Endo-Sym leverages symbiotic reflex. When ballistic impact approaches, the liquid armor thickens along the anticipated trajectory, forming redundant layers. If pierced, the breach reliquefies and knits closed almost instantly. Additionally, the suit exhibits limited autonomous combat behavior. If Stark is momentarily incapacitated, the organism prioritizes pilot extraction or engagement continuation based on threat modeling. Yet this same autonomy constitutes the suit's vulnerability. Should neural synchronization falter, the organism initiates self-protective protocols that may override Stark's intent. To mitigate that risk, Stark embeds a cascading hierarchy of kill codes. Nevertheless, the ethical dimension troubles him. The idea of armor exhibiting quasi-sentience challenges his commitment to purely technological solutions. Consequently, he reassesses design philosophy, seek a platform capable of extreme versatility without biological independence. That reflection births the Model Prime concept. 7. Model Prime Armor. Modular Mastery. Model Primeor. Model 51 embodies Stark's mature engineering doctrine. Universal adaptability minus organic unpredictability. The armor is once again a nanotechnological assembly, but the nanites operate under strict, layered logic circuits, immune to emotional drift. Each nanite is a hexagonal carbon-titanium platelet holding quantum tunneling data links. These links maintain positional awareness relative to every other platelet, allowing near-instant structural reconfiguration. The suit's hallmark is mode cycling. Prime may compact into a wristwatch-sized disc, unfold into a standard human proportion shell, thicken into pseudo-Hulkbuster form, flatten into a low-signature stealth sheath, or segment into drone swarms. Transformation sequences leverage in-platelet variable geometry pins actuated by picosecond electrical pulses. In aerial pursuit demonstrations, Prime switches from high-altitude supersonic chase mode to zero-drag glider mode, then to urban turn agile mode, all within 4 seconds. Weaponry follows suit. Prime stores dozens of blueprint recipes in onboard memory. Rail emitters, directed, energy howitzers, EMP netcasters, even a micro-wormhole portal generator for rapid troop extraction. When Stark selects a module, a hive of platelets reorganizes, some detaching to form barrel structures, capacitors, or stabilizer fins. Energy feeding is similarly dynamic. Power nodes shift to maintain symmetrical load regardless of current morphology, which solves the heat sink bottlenecks that once plagued Silver Centurion. Sensor fusion leverages multi-aperture optical arrays along Prime's surface. Each platelet's microlens varies focus electronically, constructing a compound eye with diffraction-limited resolution. Ground-penetrating radar and neutrino scattering detectors integrate unobtrusively alongside standard LiDAR, giving Stark near-omniscient situational awareness, whether flying through asteroid fields or scanning subterranean bunkers. The suit's adaptability introduces complexity in control mapping, resolved by artificial intelligence fusion. Stark's onboard AI integrates perception, motion planning, and error correction, freeing the operator to strategize at macro scale. Fail-safe layers ensure that if command channels scramble, the armor defaults to a protective hard shell, evacuating the pilot to altitude before attempting to recalibrate. Prime's only substantive drawback is energy appetite during heavy morph cycles. Extended engagements requiring frequent mode shifts drain reserves quickly. Stark compensates by packing 3 stacked arc rings and including wireless charging coupling that syncs with satellite power relays. Still, he concedes that some confrontations demand specialized power that no amount of modularity can replicate. To address such singularities, namely, Asgardian god-level threats, resurrects the union of science and myth in the Thorbuster. 8. Thorbuster armor. Odin, Force, engineered. Thorbuster arises when diplomatic tension escalates between Earth and Asgard's prince. Stark receives a shard of enchanted Uru as a goodwiller ominous gesture. Analytical spectrometry reveals a matrix whose electron orbitals behave as if bound by extra-dimensional physics. Seeing opportunity, Stark designs a reactor, embedding the Uru fragment at its heart, harnessing a fractional echo of the Odin force. The armor chassis mirrors the iconic Asgardian destroyer aesthetic, but augmented with contemporary mechanical muscle fiber. Servo muscles manufactured from carbon nanotube bundles amplified by piezoelectric inclusions deliver torque sufficient to match the raw lifting capacity of the Hulkbuster class while operating at half the mass. Enchanted plating renders the suit resistant to molecular disintegration and gravity reversals. Shield algorithms adjust when exposed to divine energy, allowing the armor to shunt surplus voltage harmlessly into ground reservoirs. Central to offensive capability is the Uru reactor's feedback loop. As the reactor channels Odin force through crystalline waveguides, gauntlet repulsors transmute electromagnetic bursts into hybrid photonic divine beams. These beams strike with energy signatures akin to Mjolnir's lightning arcs, but shaped into narrow, long-range pulses. Field records from the Stark-Thor confrontation note that each pulse created reinforced bedrock at distances approaching 10 kilometers. Furthermore, the armor's arm braces deploy tri-axial gravimetric anchors, allowing Thorbuster to lock itself against momentum transfer and stand unwavering before strikes that would otherwise hurl it across continents. Its Achilles heel is fuel saturation. The Odin force reservoir inside the reactor saturates after repeated high-yield bursts, risking unstable harmonic reverberations. During the famous duel, these reverberations cause micro-fissures that threaten catastrophic fission. Thor shatters the reactor before overload, saving both combatants and the planet. In the aftermath, Stark dismantles Thorbuster, recognizing that integrating divine artifacts into mortal engineering yields unpredictable hazard curves. Even so, the experiment confirms that augmenting repulsor tech with cosmic-grade energy can yield incomparable performance. Stark wonders, what if he built an armor not to contain a god's fragment, but to slay one? Thus forms the conceptual seed of the Godbuster initiative. 9. Godbuster armor, simulated perfection made real. Stark conceives Godbuster inside a virtual sandbox where computational constraints are non-existent. In that digital realm, he crafts idealized alloys, infinite power loops, and weapon systems unconstrained by real-world supply chains. The simulation yields a suit that can confront cosmic entities and emerge unscathed. Eventually, Stark translates the simulation blueprints into reality using advanced nanoforge printers and neutron density materials sourced from experimental reactors. The real Godbuster armor stands several stories tall, although far smaller than Phoenix Buster. It transforms energy harnessing by including a closed-loop, zero-point oscillator. This oscillator taps quantum vacuum fluctuations, providing theoretically limitless power. To channel it safely, Stark encases the oscillator in concentric damping rings made of proto-adamantine alloy. These rings rotate counterdirectionally, cancelling gyroscopic torques while modulating space-time ripple emitted by the zero-point core. Weaponization converges on a virtual mass driver capable of manifesting hard-light weapons of arbitrary geometry. Stark's neural interface paints a plasma sword or gravity hammer into existence, each limited only by reaction diffusion diagnostics to prevent structural collapse. During field deployment against the controller, Godbuster immobilizes its foe within seconds by projecting a fractal cage of photonic tendrils that each multiply into sub-tendrils at the speed of computation. The encased villain's neural implants overload, ending the conflict before collateral damage arises. Shielding employs a nested sequence of Dirac tachyon membranes, overlapping fields of negative mass energy that annihilate incoming force vectors by destructive interference. Test impacts from kinetic rods traveling at orbital velocities register negligible momentum transfer at the membrane boundary. Despite these feats, Stark's ethics resurface. A suit with inexhaustible energy and god-slaying output might one day fall into malicious hands or respond catastrophically to code corruption. Following a cost-risk audit, he self-destructs Godbuster within a remote blast chamber, erasing schematic backups with quantum randomization. His log entry reads, "Some innovations cross the threshold between protection and annihilation." That self-awareness does not quell curiosity. However, cosmic archaeologists soon uncover testimony of an armor eclipsing even Godbuster's Scalia mech designed to murder Celestials. Stark investigates, leading to his confrontation with the most colossal armor ever linked to a human mind, Godkiller. 10. Godkiller armor, miles, tall apex of engineering. Godkiller predates Stark by eons. Constructed by aspirants in a forgotten war, this 5-mile-tall Leviathan is discovered lying dormant within interstellar rubble. Stark is compelled to pilot it, not out of ego, but out of scientific irresistibility. Preliminary scans reveal towering pylons of alloy, thicker than city blocks, each layered with gravitational weave threads laced between quantum-reinforced steel composites. Even its joint bearings dwarf skyscrapers. The propulsion array combines solar wind ram scoops with matter-antimatter converters spanning the chest cavity, each converter capable of producing energy bursts equivalent to small supernovae. Guidance thrusters line titanic limbs, and its primary weapon, omnidirectional entropy, cannon harnesses neutrino acceleration to rip molecular bonds across planetary diameters. Sensor clusters the size of aircraft carriers relay cosmic microwave background anomalies, enabling the armor to sight threats light years away. To interface physiological scale with colossal machine, the cockpit places the pilot in an immersive volumetric brain-machine matrix. Ionic gel suspends Stark, reading neural impulses and amplifying them through fractal nested processors that scale control signals to macro-mechanical hydraulics. During initial sync, Stark's heart rate triples as his mind stretches to encompass a machine massing millions of tons. Though cognitive buffers help, feedback strain risks cerebral hemorrhage for any pilot not genetically keyed to the armor's original biometric passcode. That key belongs to Arno Stark, Tony's long-hidden brother. When synchronization fails, Tony acknowledges that wielding such might without perfect gene match invites catastrophic runaway actions. He disengages, leaving Godkiller locked in a sub-dimension beyond immediate reach. Godkiller stands as the technological zenith of Iron Man lore. Its size and weaponry exceed anything a cinematic adaptation could portray without collapsing narrative balance. By pushing exo-engineering to the scale of deities, it illustrates Stark's ultimate theme. Technology is power magnified, bounded only by the conscience that guides it. And so the lineage from Mark I to Godkiller charts not only escalating force, but escalating responsibility, a trajectory so extreme that even the MCU would flinch at its implications. From a cave-born iron shell to a miles-tall celestial executioner, Tony Stark's suits chronicle the limitless horizon of human invention and the profound caution required when genius outpaces restraint.